welcome back to Buzzing Threads. I am starting a new project and I thought I would take you along on my journey. So I am going to be doing one subject matter 3 different ways. I'm going to start with a simple version, second version will be a bit more complex, and the third one is going to be my quite detailed style that I quite often do. So if that's something you're interested in, keep watching and I'll start with my first version. To start work on my bee, I've tried to keep it quite simple, but me being me, it's not that simple. I probably could have made it a bit simpler. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. The fiddly bits are going to be the legs, as they're the thinnest bits. So once I drew it out, I then traced onto tracing paper. So we've got the tracing paper here, and that's so that I can then transfer it onto my heat and bond. I think hopefully you can just about make out that I've traced it, all the shapes onto heat and bond there. So I have planned out all my different fabrics. Here they all are. And I've got the shapes for that fabric next to that fabric. So I've got some yellow, 2 different lots of black, quite a dark one and a lighter one, and then I've got the white. So those are the fabrics for the design. I've then got my background. This is what the fabric that I'm going to use for the background for the bee. It's coming out a bit stronger on camera, but it's a fairly muted shades, not too dark. It's quite busy, but I'm hoping with the other fabrics that I'm combining it with, the fact that they're quite simple, that it will work okay even though I've got quite a busy background. I am planning to make this bee into a cushion, so I've also got a matching fabric for the back ready prepared as well. So I'm all set ready to get started. My next step is to iron the heat and bond onto the fabric and get them cut out. So I will catch up with you when I've done that. So I've got all my heat and bond ironed onto the fabric and I'm in the middle of doing the cutting out at the moment. You can see I've cut out the 2 wings. I just wanted to mention that when I trace it onto the heat and bond, I always kind of flip over the image, and that's because this side is going to be the wrong side. So when you turn it back, you get the right side. It's not so critical with this bee, but some things you really want to make sure you get them the right way up. Another thing to mention is that when I cut out, I leave a little bit extra, so I've gone quite close to my traced outline round most of it, and then where it's going to overlap with another piece, I have added a little bit extra on, and that's so that there's not going to be any gaps in the fabric when I piece it together. So I'm just going to carry on now cutting out all the different pieces. So all my pieces are cut out. I have laid it on top of the drawing. That just helps me make sure that I've got all the pieces and that everything looks like it goes together okay. So I'm now going to start bonding that onto my background. So I'm all ready to start sticking on the pieces to my background. I started by laying the traced bee on top of my background and deciding on the position of it. I've decided to keep it fairly central, so I measured that up and marked the centre of my quilt and then positioned the tracing on top of it and marked the position. So I've now got one piece ready. You can just about make it out underneath. I've used the tracing paper to get the right position, and now I'm going to stick that on to the background and carry on going with the other pieces. So I have finished sticking my bee to the background fabric. It's all assembled. I decided not to be too fussy about the positions of the pieces, as long as it made a basic outline of a bee. I was happy with that. and that there were no kind of gaps between the pieces. That was fine. So the next stage now is going to be stitching. So I am going to iron the bee onto some stitch and tear before I start doing the stitching, so that that's going to stabilize it when I do the stitching. So that's my next job to do. I'm now at my machine and I'm ready to start stitching. I'm going to start with doing the stitching around the wings. I want to have a dark outline to the wings, so I've got quite a dark thread, just off black, not quite black, threaded up in my machine. I've just done a bit of testing to see what my stitch is like, and I want a nice satin stitch, so I am going to use this one here. I just gradually got it narrower and narrower until I was quite happy with it, and I think the thickness is about right for what I want, so I'm going to go with that one. So I'm going to get stitching and then I'll catch up with you once I've stitched round the leaves. Not the leaves, the wings. Okay, time for a little update. I am currently working on stitching in some brown thread. I decided that I wanted something to kind of soften the black, so I thought brown would work quite well all the way around most of the different areas. So that's what I'm going to go with. I just thought I'd talk a little bit more about my stitch selection. So I went for a satin stitch because I wanted to make sure all of the edge was completely enclosed and less likely to fray, because I'm aiming this for a cushion. The width of the satin stitch I've selected, I tried to keep it quite narrow because obviously there are some fine details to this going around the leg, but not too narrow, because if it's too narrow then it's difficult to keep it on the right position around the edges. So I think this width works quite well. It's not coming out too badly. There's a few areas which aren't too perfect, but I'll go with that. One final thing to say is that I switched my foot on my machine to an open-toed foot so that I could actually see what I was doing, because when I was stitching with my kind of standard foot, I couldn't see anything, so I didn't last very long at that. I switched to an open-toed foot. Okay, so I'm going to continue on doing all my zigzagging over the edges now, and I will catch up with you later on. So I have now finished doing the applique. I think it's turned out okay, not too bad. I did add a bit of writing onto the bottom. As this is a cushion, I just thought that would complete it. That was just done with the automated settings on my machine. I did not individually write those letters. So the next stage now is going to be to quilt it. Obviously I could use this for my cushion just as it is, but I really like the 3D effect that you get when you quilt, so I'm going to do a bit of quilting. So that's what I'm moving on to now, and I'll catch up with you when I've done that. So I have now finished the quilting. I just went round the different shapes of the bee and round the writing with invisible thread so that it wouldn't show up, but you'd still get that 3D effect. So the next stage now is just to finish it off, making it into a cushion. So here is the finished cushion. I will put a picture in so you can see it better at the end of the video, but just to point out, there's the back of it. It's just got a simple envelope closure, so really quick to do. So I started this on Monday. It's now Friday, and I've been working on it in the evenings. It's taken me probably about 4 hours to make, so quite a quick project for me. And I'm pretty happy with the results. I will talk more in my video at the end, comparing and contrasting the different methods, but this is my applique one done.